Hello everybody, this is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Welcome to today's Critical Thought. We are talking about the ever-popular debate of console versus PC when it comes to the superior control scheme. Over in my little, prop corner there, I have my Super Nintendo Gamepad and Luigi. And while the Gamepad is obvious, Luigi will serve a bit of a role in a few minutes. But before we get to today's topic, there's one thing that I want to show you. I mentioned this in my other video. This is the Super Scope. This was the Super Nintendo's, gun peripheral. Nintendo was definitely going big with this, right? Not a lot of games were made for it, but as I mentioned in my 25th anniversary, we had the Metal Combat over there. Can't even fit this on my shoulder with the headset on comfortably. But while this won't really serve a purpose on this video, it will be making a return when we get to peripherals in upcoming Critical Thought. So, there's always been that popular debate of what is the superior input device, keyboard and mouse versus a gamepad. And it's been going on now for who knows how long, pretty much since I think the PC first was invented and all that. Now, despite playing both of them, there are specific strengths and weaknesses, and it has to do with what genres fit these respective platforms. For the keyboard and mouse, we see a lot of first, and in some sense, third-person shooters that are superior for it. While with the consoles and gamepad technology, it is the platformer, either 2D or 3D, that is better. And the reason why is a very interesting point. And it's going to be a part of, today's little pop quiz. So here's the question for you. Even though people will debate over what's better, what's superior, etc., there is a clear smoking gun reason why gamepads are better for platformers. That's either 2D or 3D. My question to you is, why? And instead of pausing the video and all that, I'm instead going to come back to that in about a minute or so. We're going to talk about first-person shooters now. And if you need more time, be sure to, of course, pause. We'll bring back my old 360 gamepad into the equation here. Now, the difference between a gamepad and a keyboard and mouse is with how the input is read. And I talked about this a while ago. There's essentially two kinds of inputs. You have a gradual kind, which is what the analog stick is for. And then you have a one-to-one, which is what the keyboard and mouse is. When we talk about keyboard and mouse being one-to-one, what that means is it's essentially either on or off, black or white, stop and go. You push the button, it works, you let it go, it stops. There is no micro adjustments or gradual control there. We go back to the analog stick. When I push, I can push it like a little bit to the left, a little bit more, and then all the way to full. With the keyboard and mouse, I can't do that. I'm either pressing the D key to move, and they're moving at a normal clip, or I let go and the person stops. Now, this is very powerful for first-person shooters, which are designed around this very quick and responsive movement. If you watch anyone play a professional first-person shooter, you can see how quickly they can react, move, aim, and shoot on someone with their crosshairs, or the reticle. And you need that one-to-one play there. I need to know that the second I move my mouse, up right and a little bit to the left, that's where the reticle is going to go. It's instant, it's responsive, and you basically need that if you want to do super high-level competitive play. Now, of course, in my video when we talked about gamepad functionality, I mentioned the importance of Halo and how it was able to be one of the first-person shooters to show that it could work on the consoles. And while that is true, the gamepad still doesn't quite measure up, and that's because of gradual controls with the sticks. If we look over here, it may be hard to see, but when you move a stick, the game is reading all the motion as you're moving the stick around. So if I want to go, let's say, diagonal, As I start pushing this up into the diagonal position, sorry, I'm trying to get it angled just right, the game is reading all the input of that stick as it's being moved in the position that you want, which means you're not just moving it diagonally up left, you're moving it in a neutral position to slightly up left, to up, to left, to diagonal up left. What that means is that you can't do a one-to-one with a control stick or a analog stick. This is why it's so hard to make micro adjustments or quick little changes to your aim with a first-person shooter on the gamepad. If you've ever watched someone play a first-person shooter, you can see that difference almost immediately between someone using a gamepad versus a first-person shooter. If you've watched, I think there was that video of Polygon made of Doom, it kind of seemed like they were using, I think, a gamepad for it. It was sort of like, instead of just moving the cursor from like here to here, it was sort of like moves here and then goes over here, up, like that. It like had to be done in a very linear fashion instead of just, immediately moved. And that's the advantage that the keyboard and mouse has compared to the gamepad. But I think it's time for our little pop quiz. Have you figured it out yet? Do you still need more time? I'm going to take a drink while you answer that question. So, the question of course was, why is the gamepad superior for platformers than the keyboard and mouse? The answer is actually quite simple there. When you're using a keyboard and mouse, what are the buttons that you normally push for movement? It's usually either the arrow keys or WSA and D. And of course, WSAD represents up, down, left, right. I'm sorry, I'm still getting used to the reflection. So WSAD. With the keyboard, you're going to need at minimum 3 fingers to control those actions. And because of that, right off the bat, platformers are very button heavy with a keyboard interface. If you look at the Super Nintendo controller, let me zoom this in here, I just need to use my thumb. And my thumb will control essentially 4 commands with just 1 finger. And right there, that makes it not only a lot easier to understand, but it removes a lot of the buttons that you would need. My finger's actually caught in the controller at the moment. That's good. There we go. And because of that, it's just a lot more responsive to play. Another reason is that the use of micro adjustments or the gradual play of the analog stick makes it easier to make adjustments and quickly move characters when you need to, whether it's for fine actions or very quick ones in the heat of the moment. If you played Super Meat Boy, for instance, it's a very big deal having that gradual control of your thumb to control Meat Boy's trajectory and velocity. Now, some action platformers, or I'm sorry, just platformers, get around this by using that gradual feel with the character themselves. If you played the original Mario, or I think any of the Mario games for instance, Mario doesn't immediately start, or actually I'm sorry, this is going to be for the 2D ones, so probably the older ones. Mario doesn't immediately go from stop to full run. Instead, there's that sort of build-up period, sort of like the physics taking over. That's to simulate that gradual sense of it, so that you can still make micro adjustments with the gamepad. With the Super Nintendo gamepad, there is no gradual. It still is the same feel as the keyboard and mouse. And that actually takes us to my friend Luigi here. When you play as Luigi in any of the Mario games, he controls a lot more floatier than Mario. He jumps higher, he's less controlled by gravity, which means that you need to have a greater control of the character in order to survive Luigi. And this is why the gamepad was superior, because you could make those micro adjustments. So as he was flying along, unfortunately, this is an amiibo, so I can't exactly have him moving to show that. But as you controlled Luigi there, you needed that fine motion. This was very apparent with the 3D Mario Galaxy games, where you had Luigi and you can control him. Some examples of platformers on the PC that are able to get around this. The main one I could think of would be like the N series, N plus, N plus plus, which again feeds the gradualness to the character himself instead of to the button presses. Now, this is also again why, despite so many indie developers releasing platformers, it's still recommended to use a gamepad, because it's just easier to use a thumb to control 4 commands as opposed to the 4 keys. But there is actually a weakness to this, and one of the challenges with PC developers is knowing how much of the analog stick to read. One second, let me get it over there. Okay. With the analog stick, obviously there's more than just 4 inputs. You have every part of this as it's turned around. What that means is, for the independent developer, if you're not careful with how you decide what parts of the analog stick to read for the input, you can have cases where you're pressing right, but because you're holding it right and slightly down, the game reads this as you want to duck instead of move to the right. In these games, the developers made the mistake of reading only the cardinal directions. So any deviations are still being read by their absolutes. So basically, here is up, but any of this means to go straight to the right. And you can see the trouble with that if you're requiring the player to do a lot of actions and different motions at the same time. This is why you need to be a little bit more careful with, especially with 2D design platformer games, with the analog stick, and knowing how much of these sticks bent you want to attach to the specific cardinal directions. Now, of course, it should be obvious at this moment, and we'll just go over this briefly here, we may return to this in another topic, but with 3D action games, the analog stick is easily superior compared to keyboard and mouse. Being able to make those gradual adjustments and those micro adjustments makes it easier to control character in a 3-dimensional space. You can see the difference when you're playing any of the Souls games, Mario, insert platformer here essentially. And again, we could talk more about that, but I think that's going to be a little bit too big for this critical thought. We are approaching our end here. So, I'm going to wrap this up here, and I'm going to send you over to my new N tag here, which I've got together. But once again, thanks for watching this critical thought. Be sure to come back tomorrow for my next one. And if you have any questions or things you'd like to ask about it, or about this critical thought, be sure to leave them in the notes below. Anyway, I will see you all tomorrow. Take care. Thanks for watching the video, everybody. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment, of course, share with your friends. It always helps out. Check out game-wisdom.com, where I examine the art and science of games. You can follow me on Twitch and Twitter under GW Bycer for the latest updates of new content. And be sure to check out our Patreon campaign. You can find us on Patreon under Game Wisdom, if you would like to donate and help contribute to keeping Game Wisdom going. Your donations can not only give us the monthly funding we need to keep supporting ourselves, but if we can hit some goals, it will mean more great content for you, and there are some nifty little rewards there as well. Thanks for watching this video, and be sure to tune into the next one real soon.